Nah, I fucks with Pat.
Yeah.
Look at how he talks to these niggas.
Yeah, yo.
Yo, turn that shit up.
Turn that shit the fuck up right now.
Talking that shit. Let's go.
Yo. When you up and you winning, shit is awesome. Never felt real pain till a nigga lost one. If somebody take from you, what it's gonna cost them? Tired of niggas acting like they really put in work. Hear the boss come, be yourself. It'll do you better in the long run than see yourself staring down the barrel of a long gun. Some rappers never had no street cred, so they bought some.
So the old Park Store, the old Park Store back in the days, I lived in a block I lived on 3rd Street in a block where maybe 3 buildings were standing during that time. Everything else was abandoned. We used to, this is my brother Dean, we grew up on the block and we used to use the abandoned buildings as a playground for us. That was our playground. It wasn't the park. Our playground was go inside the abandoned buildings and, hey, have fun in them, And we
Shout out to all the kids that did that.
Yes.
That had a childhood.
Yeah.
Abandoned buildings.
Yeah,
mattresses. You know what I mean?
You know what I'm saying? All that. Even you probably bump into a spot where you fall into the next floor. Hey, that's your fault. And it was Park Slope was a divided neighborhood. Because I remember 6th Avenue. If you crossed over from 6th Avenue down to 5th, 4th, and 3rd, that was a neighborhood of Puerto Ricans, blacks, you know what I'm saying? All the, African, Asian, all that.
Right.
But then if you go on the other side, it was the Caucasians, the ones with the real money. That's when you go from 6th Avenue all the way up to Prospect Park West.
Right.
So, of course, we were on the other side. So I only crossed over on 6th Avenue because what a coincidence that my aunt found an apartment on 7th Avenue right across the street from a high school called John Jay High School.
I got kicked out of there.
Oh, me too. Don't worry, we were there. And it was kind of crazy growing up at that time because every block had beef with each other sometimes. Like 3rd Street had beef with 9th Street, 9th Street had beef with Dean Street and all that. But what was good with me was I was very, how can I say, friendly with everybody. And, I used to, I never wanted to be enemies with anybody. I had no reasons to be enemies with anybody. But sometimes it would just come to you because you lived on the block that they just don't like.
Right.
But growing up and then finding hip hop in my time, is what opened up a lot of doors to almost every neighborhood coming from Park Slope. Then you have Red Hook next to you. You have Sunset Park right there. And then you have Flatbush, Bed-Stuy. And that's when I started discovering music. Well, I was always into music because, thank you to my beautiful mother who's up in heaven right now. We were one of the few Hispanics growing up to your mother on a Saturday listening to old school, salsa and all that stuff. Yeah. I remember there was a radio station called Super Gaku. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It was a Spanish radio station back in the day. Super
Gaku. I thought Meck would have been like, I know that. Like, what the
Google it now.
Right.
And it was great on a Saturday morning waking up and you hear the Super Gaku, coming out of the radio, and that's your mother up Saturday morning cleaning the house and everything. You're like, come on, man, it's my day. I can sleep all day, and you wanna, But then I started noticing about, music coming from my mother, and then I started discovering as I got older, and my junior high school used to be across the street where I used to live. Junior high school. 51.
You was one of those kids.
I lived across the street. And I was still late.
And you was still late. Yeah.
I was still late. But
was Dad in the house?
Most of my coming up from 4 to 10, 12, no. It was my mom. My mother was that immigrant Ecuadorian woman You see my mother, she don't even look Ecuadorian. My mother had blonde hair. She was white. You know, she looked like one of those, like, you know, one of those white girls, man.
Right.
And all that. And my mother was Ecuadorian, but my mother was a hustler, and that's one thing we learned from her. I learned a lot from my mother, and I learned from what I am now because of her. She was a hustler. My mother was working 3 jobs. My mother was a waitress. My mother was a waitress all her life. She was a waitress in one restaurant, then she'll be in another restaurant. You know, my mother would leave from 6 a.m. and won't be home tonight 9 p.m. But me and my brothers, my 2 brothers, we learned how to grow up and learn on, you know, like be on our own while we knew our mother was working.
Right.
And then, you know, that's when the hustling sense came in. So when I started being like 10, 11, 12, man, I was the first one to be like, you know what? I don't want to ask my mother for money anymore. So I used to get little jobs. I was one of the kids I'm not ashamed of to go to Pathmark that was down by Red Hook. There was a Pathmark, and I would go to Pathmark and I would
Pack the bags.
pack the bags up and everything had changed, and then go back home and be like, here, Ma, it's for you.
That was our hustle back in the day, packing the bags,
Packing
shoveling the
bags.
snow.
You know, packing the bags, shoveling the snow. I just got on my stories one day, and I live in Jersey, and we got snowed up, and I'm like, yo, where the kids at? They want to knock on the door, make some money. They ain't there no more. I had to do it on my own.
Right.
You know, and I discovered hip hop. You know, I was one of the kids that Ralph McDaniels was my guy back in the day, man. You know what I'm saying?
Music box.
Video music box, man. I was one of those kids that I used to rush home and make sure that VHS tape was ready to go.
Right.
Put the, you know, the toilet paper in the
In the little slit,
the little slits to
inside.
make, and I would record.
Y'all know nothing about this. Y'all know nothing about. Some of y'all do,
You
but
know?
most of y'all don't know
And go and
nothing
I would record every video.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I grew up to the Big Daddy Kane's, to the Cool G raps. You know, I was one of the biggest Black Moon fans of all time. The Buckshots.
Shout out
You
to
know what I'm saying?
Buckshot.
Helter Skelter. You know.
Shout out to Evil D.
You know, I used
Shout
to
out to
love the run. I used to love the run, and I would go up to Prospect Park and I would put my Walkman on and I would listen to Enter the Stage, the whole album. That would be the whole run. You know, that actually, you know, later on we'll talk about it, actually became my theme song of my show. You know, and I was just so much in love with hip hop that when I finally started going to high school, of course I went to John Jay, went there 6 months, got kicked out. That's another story. And then I went to another high school. You know, nobody else they wanted to put me in the John Jay Annex. My mother was like, no, I ain't putting my son in no annex. You know, and then I finally got accepted to a high school called High School Telecommunications in
I
Bay
got
Ridge.
kicked out of there too. I got kicked out of telecommunications, Westinghouse, John Jay,
Wow.
and Prospect Heights.
Thank God I didn't
Ask
get
my
kicked out of
mother. She'll tell y'all.
Yeah, I didn't get kicked out of telecommunications. I actually fell in love with going to school there because I started seeing different people finally. Because, you know, if I would have stood in John Jay, all I would have saw was the same people you grew up with, the same neighborhood. I
Right.
started seeing different people from different neighborhoods. But hip hop also did something for me. I became an explorer with hip hop because I started seeing a lot of these videos from different places, meaning the Bronx, Spanish Harlem. And I was like, yo, where are these places? Is this from New York? Like, because I was always in Brooklyn.
Right.
So I was the type of kid that I would escape. Believe me, I got my ass beaten so many times from my moms because of what I did, but I don't regret it. I used to get on my Walkman. My book bag was never with books. All I had was cassettes. From EPMD to every type of album I had in my book bag.
He was a backpacker.
Bag,
Right.
but no books. No books. And on the weekends, I used to travel. I used to get on the train, and I used to ride up to the Bronx.
It's before iPhones and social media, people. He had no idea. This is what it looked like.
This
This
was
was it.
cassette tapes.
Yep. I would travel to the
Set
Bronx. I would travel to, I remember one time taking a long trip to Washington Heights, and I went all the way to the last stop on the A train.
181st.
And no, I went to Dykeman.
Dykeman.
And I'm gonna tell you a little story about Dykeman, because I saw Dykeman for the first time when I was 16 years old. And for some apparent reason, I kept telling myself, I'm going to be back up here again. I'm going to be back up here again.
It's all around. Look around you, man. You can find inspiration. You can find discouragement. It all depends on you. Perception is everything. Some people just hear another song. Some people hear the greatest. A nigga used to have no chill. Nowadays I bump side A. Traffic going bumper to bumper, stuck on the highway.